missed The Last Dance already? Well, it's a good thing we're here. What's up, everybody? Welcome into yet another edition of the Baseline Jumper podcast, The Last Dance, if you will, because after this week, unless there's signs of a season coming back, we don't know what the hell we're going to talk about. So we're going to bring it hot and heavy tonight and then see what happens moving into the future. Jason Goldstein, Ben McDonald. Ben, with your famous shot background there, your virtual background on Zoom, how you doing? Now you're
Doing
dancing.
well. Yeah, I'm doing a little dance here. I'm doing a little maybe a little salsa, and I'm feeling good. I loved The Last Dance. I am an eternal cynic, so I was very nervous that this would not meet my expectations, that it would tarnish the reputation of my favorite athlete, that it would tarnish reputation of one of my favorite memories, which is that series against the Jazz and the flu game in particular, which we get to talk about today. Very excited about that. And instead, it exceeded all of my expectations. It made me like Jordan even more. Just absolute slam dunk. So I'm feeling great, Jason, and I can't wait for us to recap the end of the series. Where do you want to start?
Well, first, I'll preface this by saying that I know I haven't been a fan of how the documentary was structured. It was a great documentary. Not going to say I didn't like it. I thought it was really entertaining. I thought that sports fans everywhere needed this with what's going on in the world today. So we're going to do at the end our MVPs and LVPs of The Last Dance, just Ben, in my opinion. Spoiler alert, production. But, I mean, look, where else do you begin but the flu game, right? So in episode 9, they went back. It was a bit of a seesaw between like the 98 Eastern Conference Finals with the Pacers, and then it was the 97 Finals against the Jazz. And they just flew through the first 4 games. And then with George and Tim, who was Michael's best friend and his trainer, started talking about, oh, we're looking for something to eat in Salt Lake City. I'm like, oh, here we go. So are you buying into the notion that Michael Jordan was drunk / hungover? Because I'm not. Like, I legitimately think he had food poisoning.
Yeah, no, I think this is an Occam's razor thing. The story sounds like, when you hear the background of it, which wasn't in the documentary, but the director has since kind of explained that Michael Jordan arrived late for dinner, was very angry at them for not waiting for him, did not get dinner as a result, and then late that evening demanded to get some food, basically. But because it's Utah and they're not in the downtown one, and this is something Steve Kerr's talked about and a few other people have talked about, they didn't end up staying downtown. They gave the players a choice, and they opted to stay outside of the downtown. And as a result, they were out kind of in the sticks of Utah, and there's no restaurants open, and it's late at night. So the only thing open is a pizza restaurant, and then they get the pizza. And a lot of people have said, well, how come no one else got sick? The reason is, and they didn't put this in the documentary, but the reason is that Jordan spit on all of the pizza and said no one else gets to have any. Because
is that really what happened? Because did you see how they spun it in The Last Dance? I think it was Tim Grover, his longtime trainer, who was like, the pizza came and there were like 5 people trying to like look in the room, and he said he had a bad feeling about it. So, I mean, that's hearsay because maybe no one else really wanted the pizza. I don't know. But what I'm going to say is, you're Michael Jordan. You're telling me you can't get somebody to go get you food at a bit more of a well-known place at that hour? I know it was the 90s and there's no DoorDash or Seamless or Uber Eats, but
it's also Utah.
Come on. No. You could go into Salt Lake City, the metropolitan portion of it, and get this guy some food. I mean, the concierge at this desk knew the Chicago Bulls were staying there and at their hotel, and they should have been able to just be like, hey, Michael Jordan wants a steak dinner. Someone would have gotten it for him. It was Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You've got a point. I mean, someone could have gone in. I don't know the details. I guess they decided pizza was good enough. I just love that, like, this was not the first time that there has been an incident with Michael Jordan spitting on food and not letting everyone else eat it. So I totally believe it, because it sounds right up his alley that he would be kind of spiteful that they didn't order him any food at dinner and then say, none of you get to eat any of my pizza. And then obviously it gets him sick. But we're burying the lead here a little bit. the footage of that game was just as amazing as the day that I remember watching it as a kid. And I remember this game. I remember watching it. I remember bits and pieces of it. I was watching it with my parents, and it held up. And that famous moment at the end where he almost collapses, he hits the shot, and he's just leaning on Pippen. And just, man, just an amazing game, amazing achievement. And it's to me, as much as there's the shot against Elo and then the final shot, that is the crowning achievement of his career for me. It just embodies everything that he's about, and the fact that he just played through it and was as good as he was, just absolutely incredible. And I thought it was just so fitting to have that in these last episodes, because it's the thing that I will forever remember about Michael Jordan is his competitive spirit and his never say die attitude that just was pretty much indomitable.
Yeah, it was incredible. Can you imagine how that would have gone in today's NBA, the social media reaction from that? I mean, first of all, the media in the 90s was crazy, because do you remember the Dennis Rodman bit where he left for WCW and did an appearance and was like hanging out with Hulk Hogan and smoking cigars, and then he came back to practice and there were just media chasing him out of the arena and he got into a getaway car? Like, the media, they had to be that ruthless back then, because you didn't have the social media presence that there is today. But I agree, absolutely incredible feat to be that sick and to put the team on your back in a tie-breaking game. You know, the Jazz would have been champions had Jordan not played sick, or if he didn't play well enough to win. I think Jazz would have had too much momentum. That was a tough place to play, and I can't believe how filthy that team was. You know, Greg Ostertag was in his prime, and of course you had Stockton and Malone. And I do want to say I loved John Stockton's commentary on this documentary. He really showed some good insight. He wasn't a sore loser or anything about it. My question was, where was Karl Malone? Because if you go to 98, right, they won their sixth title. Karl Malone came on the Bulls bus and congratulated the winning team, which I thought was very commendable, showed a lot of sportsmanship. But why couldn't they get him for The Last Dance? I'm wondering, did he maybe not want to do it? Is his relationship with Jordan soured? Because they got
He's a media recluse. He's like a media recluse. He's famously a guy who the media can't get a hold of. He's like, country is as country can be, and he has basically shunned the media since his playing career ended. He avoids it pretty religiously. Although I think he has like an Instagram weirdly or something, but he's had some interesting incidents, and I think he's a little bit skeptical and wary of the media. So I think that's why I didn't come in. But I what you said about Stockton, 100%. Stockton came off great, and I would love to hear more about Stockton, because he is one of these guys who his place in history is so interesting, because you watch these games and he is such a prototype, Jason, for the modern game. Don't you think? He's this guy who's incredible in the pick and roll and is a great shooter and is a solid defender. I mean, he guarded Jordan for parts of that series, both years. That's crazy. He is not a big guy. He held his own. I mean, I feel like I would love to have heard more about Stockton, but you're right. His commentary was phenomenal. Didn't come off as a sore loser at all. Was very insightful. And in general, I mean, those Jazz teams, I mean, were great, as you said. I mean, they didn't do. I was pretty shocked that they didn't do the thing where Pippen says to Karl Malone at the foul line that the mailman doesn't deliver on Sundays.
Yeah, I actually read that really long ESPN article after the fact. It took like 20 minutes to read it, about one line. I guess we're in a pandemic, I'll accept it. But it was so funny how they prefaced like Karl Malone, and he went to the line and he took his signature dribbles. Like, I'm just get to the punchline. Come on. But very interesting. I don't know how the Jazz never won one. To be honest, like, they came back better in 98. You know, they lost to the better team, but then the Bulls break up, and you know, here come the Spurs with Tim Duncan and David Robinson, and then the Kobe Shaq Lakers. I mean, they are one of the best teams of all time to never win a championship, and it's incredible. And just, I was so young. Like, you grew up a Bulls fan. I was so young that I never really dug into what it took for the Bulls to actually win 6 championships in 8 years. And that was a grind. So many close games, so many low-scoring affairs. And the fact that they accomplished that in 98, capping off a second three-peat, absolutely incredible. And, Ben, how about the raw footage of Jordan and the Bulls celebrating with the piano and, they were walking back to the hotel and they're like, is this a smoking floor? Well, it is now. Like, that raw footage, like, for you as a Bulls fan, like, how exciting was it for you to actually witness that if you haven't seen it before?
It was great. And the moment that really got me the most, and I know I'm not the first one to say it, it wasn't in these last 2 episodes, was the one where Jordan collapses on the floor with the trophy, with the sobbing. That
was 96. Yeah, that was tough.
That one hit me. Like, that one really hit me. These ones, it was great to see the relief. And I as soon as Steve Kerr starts saying the acceptance speech at the parade or rather in the park, oh my gosh, I forgot. I like, that was just such a great line where he says, gotta bail out Michael again. And everyone,
incredible. Absolutely incredible.
It's no wonder that he's a coach, because he just has a way. He has a way with words. He has a way of conducting himself. And I just thought that was amazing. I loved seeing the celebration, and I loved that they pulled in a little Steve Kerr into this episode, because Steve Kerr is just the best guy. Like, you can hate the Warriors because they got Kevin Durant and they ruined the competitive balance and whatever else, but you can't hate Steve Kerr. That guy is he's the best quote in basketball, and he's just such a sharp, funny guy. And it was so cool, I thought, to get to see him celebrate. He was the most over the moon guy, even more than Jordan to a degree. When he hits that shot for the 5th championship, oh my gosh, he's losing it. And it's just great. And then they slide back and you hear the whole story about Steve Kerr's dad. And there's this great through line with him and Michael. And it really was so interesting. I was like, I had never thought about it ever in my life, that those two have this shared history of losing their father in this really, like, heart-wrenching, just gut punch way. And it was so interesting to hear that they'd never talked about it. I mean, not that that's surprising. And, obviously, if you lose your father in that way, I mean, you might not want to talk about it to anybody. But that was so interesting to hear his story, which, I mean, I knew to a degree. But then also just this, like, kind of juxtaposition with him and Michael, and then the way that he kind of climbs the mountain was just awesome. That was one of my favorite moments of these 2 episodes.
It was. And it's funny, in the beginning of the series, they did the profiles, Michael, Scotty, Rodman, Phil, little bit of Tony Kukoc. But they saved Steve Kerr's right for part 9, segueing into the championship winning shot, which is why you can't hate production that much. I think when the series started, I was just expecting it to be all about the season. So I've been very harsh on the way this was put together. But in the last 2 parts, it made sense. Like, did it make sense to go from the conference finals one year to the finals year before that? No. But while they're on the subject of 97, that little lead-in with Steve Kerr and just showed him growing up and, being around UCLA and Arizona being the only program to offer him a scholarship at the very last second, wound up getting his number retired. This guy is a winner. And do you realize that he won a 4th straight championship? Because after 98, Ben, he was traded to the Spurs. So he became the second player at that time to win like 4 straight rings with 2 different teams. And then it hasn't been done since Patrick McCaw did it last year, because he won in 18 with Golden State and last year with the Toronto Raptors. So it's kind of cool that, the Bulls break up. He goes to a team that just catapults to the top of the West, winds up winning 5 championships as a player and 3 as a coach. This guy is a winner, a bona fide winner. And growing up, no one believed in him. So I think that what happened to his dad, obviously terribly tragic, and it just fueled him to focus on basketball. And look what he made of himself. I mean, I could not be prouder to watch what Steve